Okay. So yesterday we saw the startup files. All these app underscore start, whatever files are there, they will be started once you deploy or once you start your application in IIS server. So all these files will be executed in startup, and they will set your application ready to run. Even though authentication, the identity model, and the routes will be registered in the application. Okay, whatever script files or style sheets whichever required, everything will be bundled and they will be delivered. Okay, everything happens in this app underscore start file. Okay, then controllers is another folder. This is actual controller. So the rule, whenever you request a URL from this application, that URL will be processed through root config. Your root config will validate uh, which pattern of URL that you requested will match in the root config database, so that it will initiate the respective controller under that the respective action. So in this is a C# class home controller, which the classes should be all the controllers, the classes should be suffixed with controller, and the front name whatever you want, the controller name you can keep. Normally these controllers represent a module in your application. Okay, a module means whatever related to your in your application. Further, you can divide your application into multiple modules. Okay, each module is a part of your application, building blocks of your application. So each part of your application can be represented by a single controller. So in this controller, you define many actions. Actions means the methods which has the return type action result. Okay. So for each action, you can have a respective view. So all these views and the actions are tightly coupled, so that not only tightly coupled, okay, the respective view will be there, and this these actions you can use in multiple places. Okay, so these views, how you can generate a view means just right click on an action and go to view. If there is a view respective to this action, you can directly go to that view. Otherwise you can add a new view. Okay, if you add a new view, if there is already one view existing for this action, and if you are trying to add a new view, the old view will be uh, reference to the old view will be overwritten by this new view, so far so that the old view cannot be accessed. Okay, that's the condition. So we have these controllers and actions. So when you generate a view for this particular action, we have views folder. Okay, in this views folder, respective to each controller, you will have one folder for that under views folder. So in this, for each action you will have that respective views generated with .cshtml extension. Okay, so this view will be bind to a model of your application. So where we define all our models. Models is nothing but some classes. Okay, some classes. They are with some properties. These are, we call it as data transfer objects also, whichever carry the data and they travel between, means they communicate, the communication purpose between different layers of your application. We use these data objects. Okay, data transfer objects means, so terminology is very important but the usage is same. Okay, entire C sharp, uh, we go with basic OOPS concepts, the classes, interface, abstract classes, okay, and then object, properties, model. So the terminology you have to keep in mind. So whatever we use, we will represent in class objects model or interfaces or abstract classes and even methods, functions like that. But the terminology according to this pattern, okay, MVC pattern we use is a different terminology. Okay, that's what you have to take care. Okay, so here model means a set of classes having properties which we can consume in our application. So if you see this login view model, okay, this is not one. So here if you see getting started.mvc models, so just a second. So this is again this is my login view model. You can see email, password, and remember me. So these are actually we have three properties in my class login view model. The other properties I will tell you. Meanwhile, just concentrate on this class name and properties. Okay. So this and this entire class is under namespace getting started MVC models. Okay, so this namespace we are using just like in C sharp. How we are using, same way we are referring this namespace by using class. And here if you keep this at the rate symbol, it represents your razor engine. Okay, razor engine is nothing but some C sharp only. All the C sharp syntax, C sharp programming you can use inside your view page, but you have to keep at the rate symbol before that so that your parser or your compiler will treat it as a razor engine code. Okay, so this at the rate symbol is very important to write razor engine code. Okay, and then we are saying this view will use login view model class. Okay, so this login view model class will be used for this view. So here as we discussed this form ASP.NET also I told you this is at the rate using HTML. This HTML at the rate HTML we call it as a helper. Just like your server-side controls in ASP.NET, you can use this at the rate HTML dot the text box for or text box, password for or password, validation message for like some validation controls how they are in ASP.NET. So like that you can use this HTML helper to render. Render means to bring and to write some values on your web page. You can use this helper class. So this will render all the elements, HTML elements for your ASP.NET MVC application with, and this is MVC. So this is two-way binding. We call it as two-way binding. Two-way binding means m dot email. So this model has a property called email. Okay, so let me show that class. So this class has a property email. So what MVC does is on the load of form, you are saying this form will use the model login view model. So what you are going to do is you will pass a blank object from your account controller login action Okay, you will pass a blank model here, login, or you pass nothing, so that your login model at the time of loading it checks whether an object is passed or not. If nothing is passed, it creates a blank object, and the values of that blank object will be assigned to this text box for. Okay, m dot email means a blank object of more type login view model will be created, and for that object the email value will be given to text box for. Okay, so in MVC routing is very important concept. After that, data annotations. Data annotations means, so this is the namespace system.component model dot data annotations. Data annotations means this will provide you this will provide your model the ability to validate the values people are setting for those properties. Okay, for this email, whatever you are entering, okay, that value will be validated against these attributes. Okay, so we have a required field validator. Like in ASP.NET, we drag and drop a validation control, right? But in MVC, what you can do is you can define the validation attributes on top of your model properties. So this is my login view model. This will be used to render my login form. Once the user enters any value in this text box, so this HTML helper is used to render or to bring some elements on the page. Okay, so this element will be created for my email property, and whenever user enters some value, that has to be validated against whatever validation attributes I kept here. An attribute is nothing but the, in square brackets, whatever you keep, that is called as attribute, and these are predefined attributes, means these are nothing but some classes already created in data annotations namespace. So whenever you apply these attributes on a property, when user sets or your program sets some value to this property, it will give you some validation state like the email ID is invalid. Okay, email address means it automatically validates whether the ID, whether the value you entered is following email format or not, and required is used to validate whether email address provided or not. Okay, just like required field validator and a regular expression validator given with email regular expression. Okay, these two you apply to this email property. So this is used to not only validate at client side, and these data annotations are used to validate at server side also. Means in C# also, if you create an object for login view model and you try to enter some wrong values, a model state, okay, model state. So here you can see model state dot is valid, that's what they are checking. So model state means whatever model you are passing to this method, so login view model and model, so this model state is valid or not, it checks. Okay, so means whatever model you are passing to this action, that has correct data or not according to the data annotations you defined for that model. If it is not, it will throw an error. That's the case of this login view model. Means this data annotations. Okay, and then even here we are using display, email, password, and remember me. So this is the property we are binding to the front end, and what are the display text you want to display. So this remember me is a property, simple property, label and checkbox you are using. So display for remember me. Okay, at the rate html dot label for remember me. Label for means immediately it checks this display property what you have mentioned the name. So it directly takes whatever you have given here. We will run this and we will check this simple thing. So here login link. So you can see email, password and remember me. This remember me, if you see, that is given here. So whatever given here that has come. So this MVC provides you the very simplest ways to develop your application very fast. Okay, so everything depends on your model, how you define or how you write your model and how you implemented your validations and display properties. Okay, based on all these things it works. Okay, and it provides you very easy ways to develop your application. Okay, I will tell you those things also. Before that, so this one, when I click, the email field is required, the password field is required. Okay, if you see those things required, you mentioned required, that's it. Nowhere no validation we are giving, just validate message for m dot password and we are giving text danger, that's it, nothing more. So where we have given this email, email field is required, where we have given, that is taken care by your library automatically. So at the end, scripts dot render, you are giving jQuery val. So if you see the scripts dot render, this one actually we added to our application in bundle.config. So this is what we added at the time of application start. What it will do is it will search. So this is a key we added, and then include this is the path where to validate. So this star and all we call it as wildcard. Whenever you see a star like this wildcard, it allows everything. Okay, so in my scripts folder, jQuery.validate, after that, whatever is there, include all those files. So scripts, jQuery validate, okay, jQuery validate star means this bundle.config validate star means here we have validate underscore vs doc.js, jQuery.validate.js, jQuery validate.min.js, jQuery validate unobtrusive.js, unobtrusive.min.js. So these some 5 files will be added to your view. So if you see the source of this page, we can see all those 5 files got added with a single statement. Okay, so you can see validate.js, validate unobtrusive.js. Okay, and then what else is there? Okay, these files got added. Actually it had to add everything. Validate.star, Okay, it added everything so that from these files all the JavaScript validation things are implemented in this jQuery file or JavaScript file. Okay, and it gives you this login view model issue whatever you enter. Okay, if I enter something like this, it gives not an email, a valid email address. This email field is not a valid email address. Like this, it implements all the validations. Okay. So the ASP.NET request lifecycle is also very important, just like your ASP.NET page lifecycle. Okay. How your request in MVC application processed. Okay. So ASP.NET MVC request lifecycle starts from when you enter some URL of your MVC application or any MVC application that is hosted on IIS server or wherever. If you are requesting that URL, what will happen? The very first thing, URL routing module will be executed. URL routing module means that is mainly the route engine. It checks the matching route entry. So as I told you earlier, it checks for matching pattern. Okay, and that route handler will take the control, and then the HTTP handler will take care. HTTP handlers and modules we already discussed in ASP.NET. So what they do is they will take the control and they process the request. They process the request and send allows that to gain or access that resource. So right after that, your controller factory means, so all your controllers will be built in some all are related to some controller factory. Okay, so you are defining everything, you are deriving from controller. So which controller this one belongs to? So all your controllers will be registered in controller factory. So the respective name, whatever you have given in URL, that will be taken, and that particular controller invokes action. So the method inside that controller, that action will be invoked. And then model binders, authentication filters, authorization filters, action filters, action execution. So in my application, if you see, the request will process from mainly it will be sent to IIS. IIS will search for the that will be sent to route engine. So that route engine, what it will do is it will search for matching pattern of that URL, and then it sends that request to a controller factory. In that controller factory, it searches that matching controller and initiates that controller. Okay, so here it search for this account controller, and it gets initiated, and then this controller will invoke that respective method, login method. Okay, so this login method, it will the attributes. So this entire MVC application is attribute based. Okay, attribute means nothing but what you are keeping inside these square brackets, and these are already defined values or classes in your application. Okay, so by using this you control the execution. Okay, this control execution will be taken care, and it controls all the execution of your views and everything. It validates the request, means whether the user is authenticated or not. So authentication and authorization we discussed in ASP.NET. So the same way whether this logged in user is allowed to execute this action or not. Okay, so that thing, and after that the action filters, authorization filter. Authentication filter means the user has logged in or not. Authorization filter means whether the logged in user is eligible to execute this action or not. Okay, and then action filter. So action filter means this action result. Okay, so this action filter, it has to, what action I have to execute, that will be taken care, and the model, what model, action execution. So it executes this action, and whatever model required, that model will be built, and that will be sent to this login form. Okay, action result, and this result filter will send non-view result or view result. Non-view result means directly it will say send the output to the some requesting resource. Otherwise, if it is a view, means non-view and view means for this action any view is bind or not. So go to view like that. So for this any view is defined or not. So if not defined, the result will be directly sent to result filter. Otherwise, it will be directly, it will send to view engine. That view engine again identifies which view is defined for this particular action, and that view will be loaded, and then all the HTML helpers and validation rules will be loaded. Okay, so all the HTML helper means, so you can see this HTML helper label for everything. So these will be replaced with their respective HTML. Okay, and then validation rules. So here we define validation message for. So this respective JavaScript will be loaded on your page. Okay, and that, so finally it will convert to HTML only. Okay, HTML or some JSON. So this will be sent to your result filter. So we have mainly few types of filters are there. We will cover that in next slide. Okay, so this result filter, that is a raw HTML that will be sent to your ASP.NET engine, and means IIS server, a response message is created, and that will be sent to your user. So whoever requested. So this page I requested. Okay, so when I click on login, this entire cycle happens. Okay, this entire cycle happens. So easily what you can remember about this request lifecycle is, just remember everything is URL. The very first thing, URL. Wherever you click, a new URL will be opened in MVC application. Okay, that has to be served by your IaaS server, because MVC applications are deployed or hosted on IaaS servers. So the URL has to be validated and match with the existing patterns of your MVC applications. So where you will have all the patterns registered. So your root config file, and it will maintain a routing table. So in the table, it will just checks for the pattern. Okay, that pattern where it, the current URL matches with which pattern. Okay, and then it finds that pattern, and a route handler will come. That route handler will take care of what, it divides your URL into controller and action. So what controller, what action the user is requesting. So then the request will be handed over to HTTP handler. So that handler will send the request to controller factory of your application. So this controller factory, what it will do is, anyway the controller and the action already divided. So this controller factory, it will initiate the respective controller class. That class then initiates that respective view or method, okay, action or method defined in that class. Invoke means just starting, so starting to execute that method. So then model binders, so what are the models defined for this view? Okay, so model binders I will tell you right after this. Okay, model binders, then it says authentication. Authentication means user is logged in or not. Okay, so for some actions to execute, user need not to be logged in. Just like to execute the login page, to render the login page, if you put a condition like user has to be logged in already, so there is no page called already login, right? So you cannot validate on login page user authentication, so that it will be anonymous, just like here. It is allow anonymous. Allow anonymous means anyone can come and view this page. They can load this page. Okay. And then authorization filter. So user is logged in already. That's fine. But the logged in user has the access to execute this view or not. That will be tested. And then action filter. So action filter, what it will do is whether what kind of action we are going to execute, and then action execution starts, and the model whatever required we will, the model means from database or wherever we will get that, we will generate that model and we will get it. And then action filter, it will be executed, the output action result will be sent to result filter. Okay, so here we have four major steps. One is where the URL pattern we have to identify, then initiate the controller, then initiate or invoke your action, and then send the result to your user through IAS. So four parts. Okay, one is some red color, green, and this lavender, and then blue. Okay, so you have to match the URL with the existing patterns, then that respective controller you initiate. After that you initiate the action means some method in your controller class. Before executing that action or method, you validate that action against the login, against the authorization, and then build your model and prepare your result, send to your result filter. So this result filter again in this view or non-view action. So a view, it is having a view means that respective view has to be loaded, so you will have view engine. So that view engine will identify which view has to be executed, and then that view will be rendered with all the HTML helpers and validation rules processed. Means that validation rules and HTML helpers, whatever you define, their respective HTML code will be generated, and that is sent to your result filter, that will be sent to your user. That's where you are able to see finally a page like this. Okay, so this is request lifecycle and very important for interview questions. Okay, for interviews this is very important. So same thing we explained in some other manner. So MVC browser, request, routing, MVC handler, controller, action execution, view result, view engine, view response, and it will be sent to the user back. Okay. So these are the main things. Okay, so this is again MVC routing, how it happens. So pass the URL, locate the matching route, and then route found, not found, you send 404 exception, otherwise process the resource. So these three slides explains the request flow only, these four slides. Okay, so every time Here if you see, you are registering all your routes here, controller action. Like this you can define n number of routes according to your needs. Okay, and then attribute based routing. Okay, so you need not to register any routes here directly. You can put an attribute based routing. So on your actions you can directly define route is equal to route. Inside that you give the path, that's it. Okay, so your application by user by about, it will directly give you the result. We will see that here in our home controller. What I will do is, so this is, so everything I told as attribute based. So these classes are already defined. You cannot keep your own name. So if you want to give that, you have to define some custom attributes. Okay, that how we can define that I will explain you. This is home about. So HM about I'm going to give. So if I run this application, and normally it is about to give some home slash about. If you don't keep that one, okay, this page if you see the URL at the bottom on my window left side corner, you can see at the bottom on top of Windows Start localhost 64254 home slash home about. But here, so about, right, so here also it is showing same, but it may not execute. It is executing hm slash about. So that one I have to remove that attribute here. So this one we need to disable many things, so our flow will interrupted. So let me explain that later. Okay, so like this you can maintain attribute based routing. So like this you can keep whatever you want, some URLs. Okay, according to this the route will be modified. Okay, defining a common prefix. A common prefix means what it will do is, in entire your controller for all these actions you can define a common prefix. So that here the earlier example we have users slash about, right? So this user is common for each action. If you think that is common for each action inside this method, inside this controller, what you can do is on top of your routing on your controller, what you can define is you can define a route prefix, something like this, and you give users here, and then for each action what you can do is here route, this is index, like this for all of this about. Here contact, instead of putting user slash index, user slash about, user slash contact, what you are doing is that users you keep it as common and you are saying yes, this is root prefix and you are giving. So this means just user slash index only. Like this you can give attributes Okay, so if you want to override a common prefix, what you can do is root slash, okay, root of in negation mark slash new root dot new root slash about. If you want to override a common prefix, means we have given movie and you want to override that common prefix, what you are doing is slash new root slash about. That's how you can define. So defining, so there are many types of roots you can define. Okay, so optional URL parameters. Okay, now you know how to define a common prefix and how to override it in need. Our next target is to define a default route using attribute routing. So first apply the route attribute on the controller level and specify the default action as a parameter. So this is default action. Okay, default route means whenever in this controller the request, okay, simply I will type my URL slash movie. So it has to render one action. What is the default action means? I am defining in my route here. If you put in flower brackets something like this, if you define it in, you are saying index means this action will be rendered. So if you put about will be loaded. Okay, optional parameters. So if you put in curly brackets id question mark means this is optional parameters, and default value you can directly give home slash type is equal to n. So if you pass some value, okay, otherwise it will by default take type as English. Okay, this is how you can define your default values and other parameters. Default view, default parameters, optional parameters means you can pass the value or not. So this default value means here also these are called as optional parameters, but whatever value you have given that will be assigned, otherwise the default value will be taken. Okay, and then imposing constraints means only integer value or some specified value if you want to send, that one you can define it here. And so these are attribute based routing. Okay, we'll try to override some URL and we will see. Okay, HN. So this is already defined, that's why it is giving some problem. So if I disable this, so for all this what I will do is HM. So there is no route defined, that's why your application doesn't know where to go. Okay, if you define something, what it will do is the default things it will consider like home and index, every where it has to come and the starting page and all. Okay, but here controller, so defaults, if you see the defaults I have given, home action is index and URL parameter is optional. So entirely I commented this code. Okay, So this one also not working. Just wait. So this defaults alone I will comment. So there is no defaults defined. So now it has given. Okay, so controller and other things I didn't define. So home controller, this one. So by default it is coming. Okay, so this one, oh, I put some mistake here. This is index. This is users. It is not allowing. Okay, so I will explain this custom routing. So like this, we can implement our custom routing. Okay, that I will explain you tomorrow. So this is mainly attribute based. So attribute based on attributes, you can define your routing. So where to go, where to identify the index, the views and everything. So this is how you can define the URL, how you want to look like. Okay, how your users want to look like. So this is mainly attribute based routing. So tomorrow we'll discuss about the Ranger engine. We'll start with Ranger engine. This is not a big deal. This is just like our C sharp. Okay. So Ranger is a markup syntax that lets you embed server side code into web pages. Means a Visual Basic or C sharp code you can embed to your view pages. View means that CS HTML page. So you can write your C sharp code in CS HTML page by using this Razor engine, and it will be processed and it gives you good control of your views. That's what Razor engine. So that the main things we covered almost. Okay, this Razor engine is another part that we will cover from that we start tomorrow. Okay, any doubts on this? And you guys are clear. So this routing is very important, and it is mainly used to implement some custom URLs or friendly URLs for your applications, so that it is very useful for search engines as well as user readability. Okay, and even you can customize your URLs by using this route and route prefix attributes. And the request lifecycle of MVC application is very important. Okay, the sample application you can also implement. Just create a new web application. Under that you will get a template. You select MVC application and click OK. It will generate all this sample application for you. Okay. Okay guys, thank you. Good night. We'll meet tomorrow.